Good evening, everybody. There's a cliche in football, isn't it? Can they do it on a cold Tuesday night in Stoke? And I think Norwich City have just about proven that they can. And boy, did they make hard work of it. There were some good bits, some not good bits, some concerning bits, some really positive bits. And I'm not sure this sort of 10-minute segment that we set ourselves is going to be enough to discuss it all, but we'll do our very best. Let's start with the scoreline. Norwich City have beaten Stoke City by 3-2 here at the Bet365 Stadium tonight. It was a really good litmus test, I think, for where Norwich City were. Stoke 7th in the table. Have enjoyed a fairly decent run under Michael O'Neill this season, have some really good players at their disposal. And if you look at it on paper, it's 6 points from two really challenging away games against Neil Warnock's Middlesbrough and then Michael O'Neill's Stoke City. So Norwich City have to take a huge amount of pride and confidence out of the fact that they've managed to come out of those with 6 points. And that's before you consider the injury crisis that they had prior to this game and has worsened within this game. And of course, all of the other adversities that they suffered tonight, which we'll get into. Let's start with the first half, really, because this was a really, I would say, controlled largely. There were some not so good bits in terms of some tetchy moments, some scrappy moments, some moments where the backs were to the wall. But there were also some really nice stages in terms of their possession and the way they built up the ball from the back. And we saw Stoke sort of sit off them a little bit in the opening exchanges, and that allowed Norwich to get a real feel for the game. And then we saw them go to the opposite and really try and suffocate them. And then Norwich had to play through Stoke. And that maybe provided a little bit more space in behind, as we saw for certainly the second goal. And we'll get onto that in a moment. But first and foremost, I want to talk about Josh Martin, because it was his first league start tonight for Norwich City. And for the first goal, it's a lovely bit of quick feet that allows him to bypass two defenders. He plays it on to Teemu Pukki. He then offloads it to Marco Stiepermann, gets absolutely clattered in the process, and he then finds Emi Buendia, who converts to open the scoring after 18 minutes. It's a really slick, cohesive move that ends in a Norwich City goal. It put them ahead deservedly, I felt. They enjoyed the majority of possession. They were moving Stoke around without necessarily threatening too much, but they did do well to get in behind. Emi Buendia with his second goal of the season. Of course, we spoke to him over the international break. He wants to add more goals to his game. He wants to get beyond the ball a little bit more. They did create the overload really well with that quartet, and some of their movement at times was brilliant tonight, particularly in that first period. Obviously, it differed a little bit in the second half when Emi Buendia got sent off, but some really nice movement, and that allowed them to unlock what is a very solid, organised Michael O'Neill side. And it was interesting. I stood down a very cold, very windy pitch side, speaking to Ben Gibson. Just as I was waiting for him, we heard from Michael O'Neill, who described Norwich as probably the toughest test they faced this season, and described Teemu Pukki in particular as the difference. And what we saw today, if there was any concerns about Teemu Pukki maybe going over the hill a little bit, maybe not being the striker he was from 2 years ago, I think on the evidence of tonight, that striker is suddenly trying to break through again, because his first finish was excellent. It was a volley from inside the area. For me, this is Norwich City's goal of the season. A wonderful pass from Emi Buendia over the top, first time, curls it over. Pukki does really well to curve his run and stay on side. One touch with the chest, volleys it across the goalkeeper into the bottom corner of the net, 2-0 Norwich City. And from there, it just felt about how well Norwich City could manage the situation. But this being Norwich City, it was never going to be an easy situation, was it? It was never going to be straightforward, and that was shown when Tim Krul suddenly feels his thigh, and what we now know sounds like is a thigh strain, which could keep him out for a number of weeks. That's a massive blow for Norwich City. We saw in the way he limped off. We saw in the way he was holding his thigh. That's apparently been strapped very heavily. Of course, they will assess it in the days to come, but hopefully it is just a thigh strain. It is weeks rather than months, because there's absolutely no way that Norwich could lose a character like Tim Krul, along with everyone else that they've lost. And they seem to be dropping like flies at the moment for a prolonged period of time. And there was a moment in the first half, Stoke had 3 really, really good chances to equalise. It was a good save from Krul at the start. It was then a neat block from Ben Gibson before Nick Powell's header hit the bar. But that save from Tim Krul just amplifies what he's all about. Norwich have sort of outperformed their sort of conceded goals or conceded expected goals this season. And a large part of that is down to him and his quality in between the sticks. He does keep them in games. He does ensure that they can win games. That 1-0 win against Middlesbrough, for example. I know obviously James Tavernier's double touch penalty, but you could probably copy and paste numerous examples of how he has kept them in games, how he has saved them within games, and how he's ensured that they've extracted points from situations that maybe they're not necessarily warranted. And he makes those 1-0 wins look even better. He's won a Player of the Month award. He was Player of the Season last season. Of course, that duo with Krul, Hanley and Gibson was really growing. We were really seeing a lot of confidence in that, a lot of experience, and that was going into the rest of the team. So we hope that's not too serious. Credit, just a quick shout to Michael McGovern. I don't think he'll get too much of a mention after this, but considering the situation he was thrown into, he made a couple of good saves in the second half. A very difficult one. Obviously, his distribution isn't maybe where Norwich City would need it to be. We saw Norwich City go long from goal kicks, and that wasn't necessarily ideal in terms of the way they wanted to play, and they had to adapt a little bit to him being in goal, but to be dropped into a situation and to come out of on the right end of the winning side, massive kudos to him. He's an international goalkeeper. If Norwich City do need to rely on him, he's experienced, he's been at the club a few years, he's reliable. I know he's well liked behind the scenes, and it will be an important few weeks for him, and hopefully he can do himself justice in that time. Let's move on then to the second half. Norwich City have to sort of ride the inevitable wave that comes from Stoke City. It wasn't relentless pressure, but they certainly were looking to cross the ball a bit more. They were a lot more active in terms of their attacking phases, and Norwich had to stand up to that. And they did more than stand up to it. They got the third goal. That helped them with their cushion. That helped them build up what they had and sustain that, I guess. And then really from there, it was going to be about management. I spoke about Josh Martin right at the start. This was another really, really good bit of play. He spots Pukki, again, curves his run. And this is the quality of Teemu Pukki. It's not just the finishing. It's not just the composure. It's the ability to curve runs, the ability to stay inside, the intelligence of his movements, the threat he poses, not just in behind, but also in front of defences, and how he causes them so much problems. And if you think about Teemu Pukki 2 years ago, the threat hasn't changed. The fact is that when he plays at the level he did tonight, Championship defences struggle to contain him. Michael O'Neill again described him as a Premier League striker, and I think you can see that he uses quality. And if Norwich City can keep him fit, and there is a slight concern over a potential hamstring injury, that's why he went off towards the end of the game as well. That really would be difficult for Norwich City, because if he is out for any sustained period of time, that would be Norwich City without Adam Ida, without Jordan Hugill, and without Teemu Pukki. And we saw Primožac Pueta play as a striker for the last sort of 20 minutes or so, and it was a situation where Norwich needed someone big, heavy, maybe even Jordan Hugill-esque, just to relieve the pressure, to take it in, to hold the ball up, to get them up the pitch, to give them a bit of respite. And Placheta didn't really do that, but again, he was against some towering defenders, so that's not necessarily his fault. The third goal, classic Pukki, brilliant composure in front of goal, takes it around the goalkeeper after Josh Martin slots him in. Really good play from him, and then the game turns, and it's a red card for Emi Buendia. The first one is a 50-50 that he kind of leaves his leg in for, and I can see the frustration of why he's been booked, and I can also see why the referee has booked him, because he doesn't pull out of the challenge. There's clearly intent there to leave a leg in. It's a silly yellow card. The second one, in fairness, he's not looking at the man, he's looking at the ball all the way, but his foot is so high. And when you're on a yellow card in a central area of the pitch, it's such a silly, naive, and Daniel Farke said he apologised in front of the group after the game, which is encouraging to hear. But again, it's this thing with Emi Buendia, there's the brilliance, and for everything I'm about to say, he was Norwich City's best player tonight in terms of the ball carrying he gave them, the quality in tight areas, the way he turns defence into attack, how good he is in the transition with the ball. Equally, there's the frustration and the naivety and the outbursts. Again, he spoke about this subject at length in the interview that I did over the international break, and he was very good on it. But these are the reasons maybe why he's not playing at a higher level, because he does need to curb that frustration. And it was 2 yellow cards in the space of 5 minutes. It was really frustrating. It wasn't what Norwich City needed, and it did turn the momentum of the game ever so slightly. And that meant that Norwich then had 10 men. They then had to rely on what was pretty much a 4-3-1 essentially, and or a 4-4-1 essentially, which was very difficult without a recognised striker. Ben Gibson at left back, Jakob Sorensen in midfield. They had to deal with all those adversities, and then they had to shift shape, and then they had to defend and protect a lead. And they can see 2 goals. By that point, Stoke have put on everyone who is a threat at set pieces. Tyrese Campbell and Nathan Collins, the 2 goal scorers. There was also a shaky moment where they had a goal disallowed for a foul on McGovern, which is one of those fouls that looks incredibly soft, but always seems to be given. So I think they will feel a little bit hard done by to an extent, but Norwich City did make it hard work for themselves. I've just about got nails left. My heart rate is just about intact. We can all breathe because when we reflect on this, it's not the nature of the performance, but it's ultimately the result. And as I said right at the top, it is 6 points now from 2 really, really tough championship away games. I spoke to Ben Gibson after the game, and he, in his view, this proves that Norwich City aren't a soft touch. You can say they aren't a soft touch anymore, whatever you like. It proves that they've got different facets to their game. They can show different faces. They can prove to teams that they are capable of mixing it up, and they're not just a side based on slick possession, and they can grit it in and put their backs to the wall, and that's a really positive facet to have, particularly in the championship. And when you combine that with 3 really well created goals, well constructed goals, well taken goals, the quality of their play in possession and how they move the ball and how they play in offensive phases, that's all very positive. But then to combine that with a defensive spine, I think Hanley and Gibson are growing every week. And if that partnership continues to blossom, then Norwich City will end up with less goals conceded than they have in the last in the last 2 seasons, essentially. Because if they do get promotion this season, it's going to have to be a little bit different. They are going to have to prove they've got a bit more of a robust spine, and this is why that cruel injury, that Pukki injury, the Lucas Rupp injury, is so damaging, because it's a spine of a team that's been doing really well. At the moment, though, they've got players coming in and taking the opportunities. Josh Martin's a prime example. Alex Tettey came in and did a very solid job, covered in the right areas. It was probably a game built for Alex Tettey, really, but he did incredibly well. And yeah, I'll probably give my man of the match to Timu Pukki. I think it was an absolute shoe-in for Emi Buendia before his naivety and he gets sent off, and that temperament that he needs to curb. But yeah, some really good performances, some really poor stuff, but ultimately it's a cold Tuesday night at Stoke, and they've taken 3 points, and that is a good measure of a good team. And they keep finding a way to win games. And look, Leeds United did it a lot last season at this level. They played some excellent football, but equally they got the 1-0 wins. They got the wins by 1 goal that just ground out enough victories to get them over the line. It's so crucial for this level of football because of the relentlessness of it, because of the injuries they have, because of the quality of opposition. Stoke are absolutely no mugs. They've got a squad packed full to the brim of championship talent. Tom Ince came off the bench. Lee Gregory came off the bench. These are seasoned championship pros, and under Michael O'Neill have a very astute coach as well. And I've no doubt that they will be in and around the playoffs. And for 65 minutes tonight, they were comfortably second best to Norwich City. And for the last 35, Norwich had to really stand up and be counted, and they did that. So that's the positive. Coventry City at home on Saturday. Who knows what the team's going to look like? I'll take my boots. We might get a game, but of course, it's the game against Sheffield Wednesday in a couple of weeks' time that we're looking forward to as they start the lawnmowers. I think that's probably my cue to wrap it up, of course, where fans may be back at Carrow Road, depending on the tier that Norwich finds itself in. That's set to be revealed on Thursday, I believe. So fingers crossed they're in the lowest tier. Fingers crossed for 4,000 fans back at Carrow Road against Sheffield Wednesday very soon. Pinken.com, the place to go. We're going to have some reaction from Ben Gibson. Got Paddy Pointers going up as well. All the analysis, all the reaction to this win in the Potteries. I'm going to get in the warm. Thank you.